I had already brought to Ambassador Bolton's attention the attacks, the smear campaign against Ambassador Yovanovitch, and he then, in the course of that discussion, said that Rudy Giuliani was a hand grenade that was going to blow everyone up.
Did you understand what he meant by that?
I did, actually.
What did he mean?
Well, I think he meant that, obviously, what Mr. Giuliani was saying was pretty explosive in any case. He was frequently on television making quite incendiary remarks about everyone involved in this, and that he was clearly pushing forward issues and ideas that would, probably come back to haunt us. And, in fact, I think that that's where we are today.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in New York. Grenade detonation this morning, New York City, as FBI agents raided the home and office of Rudy Giuliani, seizing his phone and electronic devices. Today's development signaling a major turning point in the investigation by the Southern District of New York, which is looking into Giuliani's dealings with Ukrainians. From the New York Times, which was the first to break this story, quote, the federal authorities have largely focused on whether Giuliani illegally lobbied the Trump administration in 2019 on behalf of Ukrainian officials and oligarchs who at the time were helping Mr. Giuliani search for damaging information on Mr. Trump's political rivals, including Mr. Biden, who was then a leading contender for the Democratic presidential nomination. Former senior Justice Department official Victoria Tensing, who was close to Giuliani and also had dealings with several Ukrainians, had her home searched by federal authorities as well this morning. Attempts to obtain the search warrant for Giuliani's phones and devices have been underway for months, according to the New York Times, and they report that investigators had been met with pushback when trying to secure it previously. Quote, under Mr. Trump, senior political appointees in the Justice Department repeatedly sought to block such a warrant, New York Times reported, slowing the investigation as it was gaining momentum last year. After Merrick Garland was confirmed as President Biden's Attorney General, the Justice Department lifted its objection to the search, raising all sorts of questions about former Attorney General Bill Barr's involvement, heavy-handed involvement, in the federal investigation of his boss's lawyer. We do know last year that Barr pressured Jeffrey Berman, who was Manhattan's top federal prosecutor at the time, to step down. Berman refused and then was fired by Donald Trump. We have more questions and answers at this hour, and that's where we begin with some of our favorite friends and reporters. Chuck Rosenberg, a former U.S. attorney who worked on the staffs of both Robert Mueller and James Comey at the FBI, is here. Also joining us, Frank Figluzzi, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence, and Jason Johnson's here, a professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University and a contributor for the Griot. Lucky for us, all three MSNBC contributors. Frank, I start with you today. Can you help me understand, and we should make perfectly clear that the Justice Department doesn't give a warrant. The Justice Department gives permission to investigators to go to a judge to seek a warrant. Is that right? Can you explain that process and what you need to convince a judge to say yes?
Yeah, I think the process is really important for your listeners to understand. Why? Because I'm sure that any minute now we're going to start hearing claims of witch hunt and deep state within the Justice Department. But people need to understand that a U.S. magistrate or federal judge had to sign off. And here's what the FBI and prosecutors had to convince that judge of. It's two parts. First, that there's a crime that's occurred, federal jurisdiction, federal crime. And secondly, and this is important, that the evidence of that crime is in this place we wish to search. And that has to be fresh information. That can't be something that's a year old or even usually 6 months old. It's got to be updated to say, you know, those devices, those records, the electronic stuff we're looking for, they're right here, and we know they're right here. And so here's, you led off correctly. There has been indication that for months, maybe as far back as December, the Southern District of New York was petitioning the DOJ in Washington to go ahead with the search of Giuliani. And for some reason, timing or whatever, miraculously it took a new Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General before there was sign off on that. And because it involves lawyers, it has to go to a special unit at DOJ that says, okay, what's the process here? And FBI agents who serve that search warrant can't have anything to do with the substantive investigation. Why? Because now they're going to start laying eyes on potentially attorney-client privileged information. So they serve as this filter team. There's lots of process, lots of steps here, and it all played out this morning.
What are they looking for, Frank?
They're looking for evidence of a crime. Now, piecing together what we know is going on, and now piecing together the fact that Victoria Toensing was searched and Rudy Giuliani's office and apartment were searched. Now we can look at what they are doing in concert with each other. What do we know that's public information? There's Ukraine in this mix. There's potential that foreign money was paid to them. We know foreign money was paid to them for what? Well, you mentioned it in your opener. Let's find some dirt on Joe Biden. So this is going to go beyond the mere kind of routine lobbying, foreign lobbying case, Foreign Agent Registration Act case. This isn't just a lobbyist who forgot to file some paperwork. This opens Pandora's box about the potential for foreign money coming into the 2016 campaign, foreign money funding an effort to dig up dirt on Joe Biden and potentially Hunter Biden. And let's not forget, who does Victoria Toensing represent? Among others, a guy by the name of Dmitry Firtash. Who is he? A Ukrainian oligarch closely tied to Putin and Russia. Don't be surprised if investigators want to find out if Russian money was getting into the campaign in 2016.
I desperately want to turn to Chuck and Bill Barr, but I need to, you open this Russia question, and so Frank, as the only panelist with FBI experience in counterintelligence, I'm going to stay with you for one more here. Put the crimes and the criminal investigation aside for a moment. We now have a Justice Department who has lifted an objection from the previous management at DOJ to pursuing information that may have at its roots foreign money that may be coming from Vladimir Putin that was explicitly to smear Joe Biden at the very, very beginning of the presidential campaign. What are the national security implications of what this investigation unearths?
Yeah, the answers are going to start coming, hopefully now, answers that everybody's been looking for. It's going to be slow and methodical. It's complicated by the fact that these are lawyers and lawyers for the president. But look, I'm assured and encouraged today that the process is continuing, that someone's trying to get to the truth, and that, you know, the so-called no collusion theory that you'll keep hearing, that the Mueller report found no collusion, which, by the way, I disagree with. I believe the Mueller report speaks to collusion, but not criminal conspiracy. I think they're headed in that direction because if indeed foreign money is flowing through surrogates into the 2016 campaign, that's where this could be headed.
Now, Chuck Rosenberg, I feel like these comments may land like body blows about the department you revere and served in, but Bill Barr's public-facing behavior as someone who gave speeches where he called career prosecutors, he likened them to preschoolers or kindergartners, I can't remember, who meddled in the Stone and Flynn cases in a manner that so repelled career prosecutors that they quit the cases. I think one even quit the department. What if that was the public sort of bravado that was on display for all of us to see? What was he doing behind the scenes? What questions do you have based on today's report?
Yeah, one obvious question is whether prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, Nicole, were really being interfered with at a political level, in a political way, from the leadership of the Department of Justice, right? So you mentioned Flynn and Stone. And I think those are really important analogs because when Bill Barr interfered in those cases, we heard loud and clear from line prosecutors, from the men and women in the field, about what was happening and why it was unacceptable. We haven't quite heard that out of the Southern District of New York. We know there was some, hostility between the former U.S. Attorney, Jeffrey Berman, who has a very good reputation, and the political leadership of the department. But no resignations, no letters, no filings that indicated that the Southern District of New York prosecution team felt that its case was being mishandled or politically manipulated. So a really important question for me is, why the delay? Was it nefarious? Or was it non-nefarious? Did it have to do with accruing, aggregating probable cause, the legal threshold you need to go in on a search warrant that Frank so ably described? Or was it something else? I think that's a really important question, and sitting here right now, I don't know the answer to it.
Let me stay with you, though, on Bill Barr's intersection with Victoria Toensing and Rudy Giuliani. Donald Trump told President Zelensky of Ukraine to coordinate with Rudy Giuliani and Bill Barr, not just Rudy, Bill Barr also. And Bill Barr, this is from some Washington Post reporting in February 2020, Bill Barr acknowledges the Justice Department has created an intake process to vet Giuliani's information on Biden's. So, you know, the viewing public may have thought that Rudy was out of his mind, but Barr had a process set up for the United States Department of Justice to intake information that was coming through Rudy from Ukrainian oligarchs with ties to Putin. I mean, what is wrong with that? Start at the beginning, Chuck Rosenberg.
Start at the beginning and go for the next several hours, Nicole. What's wrong with it is that Rudy Giuliani was probably the single most uninformed and unreliable source of information imaginable. And as we see this play out now, he was a conduit of information for Russian intelligence, which is absolutely astonishing. If you just stop there, Russian intelligence was influencing the information that Rudy Giuliani was feeding to the Justice Department to try to seek dirt on a political opponent of the President of the United States. So maybe Bill Barr, and I'm done with giving him the benefit of the doubt, was trying to move Giuliani out of the way and set up some separate channel for all the nonsense he was funneling to the Department of Justice. Or maybe they were taking this stuff seriously and thought that Giuliani needed a voice and had to have a means to relay Russian intelligence to prosecutors who, by the way, thank goodness, as far as we know, never acted on it. All of this is really muddled right now, right? It's a big black box. We only see little pieces of it. But again, to Frank's point, today was a big day. Today was an important day because whatever was holding up that investigation is gone. And prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, the career folks, the men and women in the field, were allowed to move forward with their FBI counterparts. And it will take a long time, and attorney searches are complicated, and the FBI and the prosecutors need a filter team or a clean team to review this stuff, but it's moving forward. And I think that's the single most important thing for your viewers from today. It's going forward.
So when Bill Barr set up that, and I don't want to get any of this wrong, intake team to intake all of Rudy Giuliani's material. Here's what was publicly known about Rudy's involvement with the Ukrainians. Here's what Rudy copped on CNN to asking Ukraine to do.
Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually, I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a court finding.
You never asked anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The only thing I asked about Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antak.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
So Bill Barr, when he set up an intake, knew that Rudy Giuliani had copped on television to asking Ukrainians to investigate Joe Biden. Bill Barr had every reason to know exactly what Ukraine was doing. So I guess what I'm still grappling with is the Justice Department leadership that didn't let this FBI investigation go to a judge and see if they had enough reason for a judge to grant them a search warrant, knew exactly what Rudy Giuliani was doing because he said so on CNN.
Yeah, to the extent that anyone knew exactly what Rudy Giuliani was doing, Nicole, Bill Barr should have known what Rudy Giuliani was doing. By the way, that man, Giuliani, is really the gift that keeps on giving from an evidentiary standpoint, because you mark that clip that you just played as Exhibit 1 in a trial for failing to register as a foreign agent. And importantly, it is not just an administrative case. It is not just failing to file paperwork. My goodness, we saw the ramifications of Giuliani's nonsense play out in the Congress of the United States in an impeachment proceeding. We spent endless hours talking about it. And so, yes, you're right. Bill Barr knew or should have known exactly what Rudy Giuliani was doing because he told Chris Cuomo what he was doing on national television. Was that intake process set up simply to shove him to the side and give him a place to, spout his nonsense? Or were they taking it seriously? I hope it's not the second thing. I hope it's the first thing. I still don't know the answer to it.
Jason Johnson, I said this week that our frame on Republicans under Trump was all wrong. We thought that they ran from our cameras after he tweeted something reprehensible because they were afraid of a mean tweet. That was wrong. They ran from our cameras because they agreed with most of what he had to say. Our frame on Bill Barr is in some ways more wrong. We thought he was there maybe to sort of split the difference, right? To be a Trumpy Attorney General of the Justice Department. That is so wrong. He was in bed with the Victoria Tunsings. Yeah. He was on the receiving end of a phone call from John Bolton, who was worried that corruption in foreign policy was taking place inside the Oval Office. We do not know what he did when John Bolton called him. And again, these are like tarantulas in a bowl stories. It's hard to know who to root for. But we know that Bill Barr was leading the Justice Department when the investigators first thought they might want a search warrant. What questions do you have about Bill Barr's leadership of the Justice Department at a time when Rudy Giuliani was openly colluding with Ukraine to dirty up Joe Biden?
Look, I always thought he was corrupt, and I always thought most of these Republicans believed in this. And look, if this was a mob movie, right? This is the montage at the end where you see the cops breaking into like an Italian restaurant and a hotel and a bar, and they're starting to take people out and people are screaming and yelling like that. This is the net closing down. And the question is going to be whether or not our current Justice Department is willing to go all the way up the chain to Bill Barr. He was intimately involved in this entire process. He couldn't not be. And if he tries to claim he didn't know, I didn't steal the 101 Dalmatians. Well, why do you have all these leashes around? Like, it's really obvious. If you set up an intake process for Rudy Giuliani, then you clearly know what he's doing abroad. And it's not necessarily an issue of, well, we needed to vet it before we went to the President of the United States. He was knee deep in this. So my question simply is, when did you set up this process? How much information did you take in during this vetting process? And how much cover did you provide for Rudy Giuliani when other FBI or NSA agents may have been looking into what he was doing? And this goes to this larger issue again with this administration, which is how far up are we going to go? Does Joe Biden want to say, look, we're just going to handle the pre-existing, investigations and go there? Or is he going to say we're going to root out the corruption and the treason of this previous administration and hold all these accountable? Because it goes from Giuliani, it goes to Bill Barr, it goes to many other people in that administration, all the way up to Donald Trump hiding out in Mar-a-Lago.
Well, and I guess my last question, Jason, for you is they took his phone records. I'm sure there are phone calls with Donald Trump. I mean, do you think that this Justice Department's got to make a decision about whether they look at Donald Trump, not just in the context of incitement of the insurrection, but part of the operation to sort of launder foreign Russian disinformation about the Bidens?
I think that decision was already made, Nicole. Like you can't not think about the end boss once you begin this process. The question is just going to be, how much will do they have? Are they going to stop when they get to Ivanka? Are they going to stop when they get to Jared? Are they going to stop when they get to Trump? Or are they going to go all the way through and get justice? We have to view this in terms of the national security of this country. This isn't about healing. It isn't about going forward. If you allow these people to get away with what they did, then they will simply do it again through other means. And so I think they already know what the end result of this is going to be. It's going to be a question as to whether Merrick Garland, President Biden, and Vice President Harris say, all right, look, we're going to go all the way with this, as opposed to stopping short and just getting a couple of big fish.